Hello, Steve White, Trekboy89 for Steve Arts 89. Star Trek's Gatekeeper. Happy First Contact Day. I just watched Star Trek The Motion Picture, Star Trek The Motion Picture, Star Trek The Motion Picture, the extended video version, Star Trek The Motion Picture, the director's edition, to draw my comparisons. Now, I was part of the movement to get a proper HD version of this film out because, I grew up with the extended version, and then I went to the director's edition, and I only saw the original version on TV a few times, and eventually I had a video copy of it, which I think I watched once and was shocked by the poor condition of the print. And I understood now why a lot of model Klingon ships were green, because of all the colour issues, and it was such a mess. So it's very hard to get a perspective of what this really looked like when it came out in the cinemas versus the final version. But I was really excited when I heard they were going to do a remastered edition, and then there were a lot of articles and good news coming out. And then the last thing that we got out was an article about how they were colour grading the film for HDR, and the images they had looked awful. These are supposed to be finished images from the film, and they had a lot of yellow and green in them, and the contrast was off. There was a shot of the space station. The planet was really glowing, Earth was really glowing, and the space station was really dark and then really yellow. It just looked awful. And then they had a shot of the Enterprise as it has the sun coming around the planet as it's leaving the solar system and that. And they had removed the animation of the sun slowly sort of coming around the edge of the planet and just had a generic like light with glare. And it was very contrasty, and I was horrified. I did a video basically saying they are ruining this film in favour of HDR, and I was really upset with the production crew about this. Now, as it turns out, and I hate humble pie, and I'm only eating a little bit of it, the images weren't accurate. The film looks fine, but the images they put out were way off. So what I was complaining about was real. Unfortunately, it wasn't really in the film. So I basically did this scandalous video and got blocked from all the Star Trek Motion Picture Facebook groups, and got a lot of harassment from people over it. And apparently I was removed supposedly, allegedly, at the behest of members of the production of the show, of the film. So that wasn't fun. It was quite traumatic. And it was all for nothing because those images are not in the film. Now, there are some contrast issues with the shot of the ship above the planet with the sun coming out. You can't see some of the detail that you can see in the original. So that issue was there, and that's something that's part of the whole film. But I got blocked for nothing, basically. Someone put up images that weren't actually final images from the film, presented them as that, and then when people reacted to them negatively, and I wasn't the only person, probably just the loudest person, I got in trouble for it. So I don't get to enjoy talking to all the Star Trek fans and all the Facebook groups about this now. I'm just talking to myself, basically, for nothing. Now, the overall film does have some contrast issues. It's very dark, a lot of shots, a lot of scenes. Some aren't, but some are very dark, and it really affects some of the detail. I mean, the Epsilon 9 station, when they are looking at the Klingon footage, the Klingons on the monitor and trying to work out what's happening with them, it's so dark. Now, the original, as far as I can tell, the original was a bit dull in colour. The video version, extended video version, was the same. The director's edition, they went for a much warmer look, and the sort of beige and orange and warm skin tones are a lot stronger, and the blue is a lot less prevalent. In the Blu-ray edition and the DVD edition of that edition, they brought in a lot of blues, and they also bumped up the colour, so there's a lot of brighter colours in it, and it looks nicer, but you can definitely see the difference between the director's edition. The director's edition was a little dark, but this version is a lot darker in places, and it does really, like I say, lose a lot of detail, and just, it's not good. So that's one thing I'm definitely faulting them on. They should have fixed that. In all this amazing colour grading, they could have at least fixed the contrast and the brightness, but they didn't. There's very few extra special effects, which I thought we were going to see. There's a couple, but that's about it. Now, let's start at the credits. The credits, they now have little yellow sparkles in the titles, which kind of feels like beaming, but kind of feels a bit more like Twilight. I don't know. Then we get to the Klingon ships, and it's a dark scene, as I said. In the director's edition, the director's cut, you could actually see the black lines, and you could see space was grey underneath. And instead of fixing that, they just made it darker, which is what they did when they did it for Blu-ray. So that kind of kills some of the detail for the ships, and they do look a bit green in a few shots when they should be grey the whole time, but not as green as the video version, the regular video version. They look really green in that. We have the same 3 Starfleet shots. I'm very disappointed by that. I thought maybe they were going to fix that one shot that was found of you're looking at the beach. You're right, like on the edge of the bay, and you can see a hill, and then the tram Starfleet station is right above it, and there's a little shuttle going into it. That looks gorgeous. I was hoping they were going to restore that shot instead of using the second shot of the ship just flying over the bridge from the other side. It looks very close to the first shot. The first shot is one side of the bay, the second shot is the second side of the bay, and the third shot is a close-up of the ship going into the shuttle bay, whatever it's called. And it's really weird because the detail in the city is amazing in the first shot. The second shot, the tram station on the other side that they've put on the mountain looks really blurry and soft, and you can't see any detail. It's like it was done in a different program or something. It doesn't look good. And the second shot, we've seen it, the last shot, we've seen it before, and it does look a bit softer, the actual building itself, and lacks some of the detail that it should have. So that was disappointing. So that whole thing was disappointing. It's still better than the awful job they did on the original 3 shots, because they just look like they did it in like Microsoft Rainbow, whatever that original program was. I can't remember what that was called. It looked really bad. So this is better, but they didn't take the opportunity of fixing one of the original shots, and there is a inconsistency where you have a lot of detail in some shots and other shots. The CGI buildings that they're adding in, the new buildings that they're putting in the environment, look really soft and blurry, which just doesn't make any sense. What's next? Oh, the transporter sound effect. They did some of the director's edition too. They add more effects in, and it just ruins it. The original one was just chilling as they're dying, basically. This one, there's just too many effects. It's too dense, and you just sort of lose that. So it loses some of the horror. But that was the problem with the original director's edition. But they didn't fix it and go back to the original. Oh, and the costumer I meant to mention in the space station. The tram station, they actually have a couple of issues. They had a guy who was one of the costumers in the shot for a second. They didn't remove him. They should have removed him. And the other thing is, one thing they did do was, in the original director's edition, they took the whole wall out so they could have extra space for new shuttles to come in. In this edition, they put the wall back. They just moved it back, so you still have an extra landing space for the shuttles to sit in, but you still have some of that wall, so it still has that same sort of feel. But so they managed to improve on that, and they moved because in the original shot the bridge was really far away, and they moved it really close. Now they've moved it back a little bit more, so it looks a bit more balanced now. But one of the problems with this movie though is now when you're looking at it for all the new elements, I was looking at it closer than ever before, and I noticed things I didn't notice before, like the people in the mat at the background don't move. I never noticed that. All the times I've watched this, I never was looking at that area. So I'm disappointed at that, because I never would have noticed that if I wasn't like looking at this for something new. The original sun animation, as I mentioned, is in the shot now when the Enterprise is leaving. And they did add the Earth in when the Enterprise is leaving, and they got rid of the black bar, which I never understood why that black bar was there, because you barely see the bottom of the ship. So I don't know why they wouldn't have had the ship sitting on the stand on the bottom, not the one on the side, because it just created a problem. I don't know why they did that. It would have been easier to hide the bottom of the Enterprise the whole time in the shot than it would to have the bar on the side and then remove that. So I don't know what that was about, but they fixed that again, because they fixed that in the first edition. And then we get to the recreation room lounge. I can't believe I'm at 9 minutes already. God. Someone needs to teach these people how to rotoscope. I mean, seriously. The original shot was just 2 square windows and a starfield that was added in, and the rotoscoping on that wasn't great. but it was okay. And my understanding was they should have had the original footage somewhere. I've seen shots of the original with the blue before they did the effects, so they should have been able to do a really good rotoscope of it, because they removed the original window frames and put in a more accurate version of the officer's lounge windows, which is 4 long windows, and they made them look like they're in the distance, because the lounge part they're sitting in is actually quite far back, and you can see the nacelles through the windows, but they're all the way down the bottom. And I'm not it doesn't quite look right, because in the other version they supposedly put a camera in that space to capture what it actually would have seen out the windows. So they do look to be too far down, but I'm not sure. I don't know if they tested that and the first person got it off or got it wrong, but I'm not sure. But it's nice in a way that they finally have those windows, but I can see a whole bunch of Polar Lights model builders tearing their hair out now, because their officer's lounge now no longer matches the one in the movie, because it was actually technically facing the other way, and what we were looking at supposedly was screens in the background of the nacelles, not actually looking out that window. That's why it wasn't the square windows that you see in the scene where they gather the crew together to show them Epsilon 9 basically being destroyed. It's actually just view screens in the back, which I guess were supposed to look like windows, I'm not sure. Now we're actually looking at the actual windows, and I'm guessing the black screens you see on the side are that section of the lounge now. I don't know, but so they've shifted the lounge, how it's built again. We've got a new red alert for when they go to red alert when they first are approaching the cloud. When the shuttlecraft, the Vulcan shuttlecraft, is approaching the Enterprise, you see out the windows, and the nacelles had a bit of orange from the impulse engines on them, but now it's way brighter, and it just shows even more that there isn't as much orange on the shuttle which is approaching, which also should have some of that reflected light. So if they were going to add more orange onto the nacelles, they should have added some onto the shuttle, although it does pass those lights at a certain point, so you wouldn't see it all the time. But in the earlier shots, I think the first shot you should have seen it, unless it had already passed that point. Either way, it does seem too bright on the nacelles. I'm not sure now about whether the shuttle should have had any at all. I think maybe at the start of the shot, so I don't know how long it is. Like I said, I've watched all 3 versions, actually all 4 versions. I had a quick look at this is the original version, the extended video version, the new Blu-ray version, and the director's edition version. Yes, so I did have a look at four versions of a bunch of scenes and a lot of other parts from it. The rec deck, again, we see outside now, instead of the original had black, the director's edition, the first one, had purple. The Vija was just looking out at Vija from the inside out, and it was purple, which always seemed odd to me. Now it's more grey, so that makes a bit more sense. What else? The torpedo shot, when Vija sends out the torpedoes to orbit Earth, they had originally one shot of it going out, and then one shot of 4 or 5 torpedoes sort of coming around the circumference of the Earth and just sort of sitting there in a line. In this shot, we see 3 torpedoes coming towards us and one pass close to us, and the other 2 go off to the sides. There's no reason why they couldn't have had both shots. But the later shot is a lot lighter, because the original torpedo, when it comes out of Vija, is really yellow and green, and later when we see them in space, they're more of a pale green, so that looks a bit odd. And the originals, they were softer, but they were more green, the ones that were sort of going along the circumference of the planet in a line. What else? Oh, I noticed there's a shot of the Enterprise where part of it is transparent. I won't mention where, because I don't want to ruin it for anyone else if they haven't noticed it. I wish I hadn't noticed it, because I was looking more closely. I'd like to believe it's just a reflection, which is what caused it, a reflection of the blue screen, and then, you know how those things happen. One little thing they did add, which was really interesting, was the Enterprise, when you see it come over, finally get to the end of Vija, in the original it just keeps on going, this tiny little Enterprise. In this edition, you actually see this tiny, sharp little Enterprise come along, turn around and face Vija again, which is what Kirk asked Sulu to to do. And then the next shot is basically looking back at V'Ger. So they did that. That was cool. What else? Enterprise is too yellow. There's a shot where the Enterprise is facing V'Ger as the bridges come together out of all the little lights, and the lighting on the back of the ship from the ship, it's external lighting, is way too yellow. Flyover. Yes. V'Ger. Now, when we see V'Ger in full, the shot is better than the image looked. You see a lot of detail, and it's all there, but it does look doesn't look long enough, and the yellow lights towards the end, not on the very end, but towards the end, are way too bright. And they look that in the still that we got, and they look like that in the film. They should have been much duller. You should have been able to see some of the detail in that area. And I do think the original shot is kind of better because you just have the cloud fading and you still get a sense of it being sort of dark and mysterious. You don't really see all the detail. This version, the cloud dissipates. You see it dissipating in different shapes, which looks more interesting, but then you get this really bright, too much detail, and the yellow lights towards the end are way too bright. And I can't believe I'm at 16 minutes. Wow, I can't believe how long it's taken to go through this. There's only a couple of things left. The cubes, as they're walking across the bridge, the section really close to them is sharp and the rest are all blurry. They didn't fix that, or they just repeated that mistake. And something they added in was when V'Ger turns from sort of a blue and a green on the background to red when it gets angry, they actually showed some red sort of like lightning sort of going across the roof of V'Ger, I guess, because they're inside a giant hollow sort of area. And when we actually see V'Ger, when it finally evolves and appears to explode in light, they actually show... In the original, we just saw an explosion. We never really saw V'Ger in the original. In this edition, the first director's edition, we saw V'Ger from the side like a cigar, sort of with the light building in the middle and then exploding. This version is better. We actually see it from one end. So it's like a circle, and the circle's just surrounded by light, then gets enveloped by light, and then the explosion comes. So it looks a lot better. You still get to see V'Ger, and you get to see a lot of detail, but it still feels like this central sort of explosion. Seeing it from the side, the shape didn't look wrong. It killed all the symmetry and all the beauty of all the rings coming out of light and from everything from the explosion. But yeah, so wow, this is pretty much a 20-minute video. But that's like everything. I swear to God, I if I missed anything, I'm sorry, but I watched both versions. I screen captured about 1,600 shots, which I went through. And I bet I missed some stuff, but I'm making comparisons. I mean, I'm shocked at the things they got wrong. The color grading is wrong in some of the shots. The brightness is way too low in some of the shots. Some scenes are way too dark. The torpedoes aren't the right color. The Klingon ship, they really, the original version was really warm, and you felt like there was some real sort of heat in there. It felt like just a different environment in there. And this version, it's really grey and red, and the Klingon torpedoes are really red. So they've taken all the orange out of those shots, and it really kills the atmosphere on the ship itself. There's a bunch of little things that are wrong. And like I said, the whole overall colour of the original version, Robert Wise wanted it to be warmer because he felt it was too cold. And then they went back with the Blu-ray and went back to it being too cold, and now they've just done that again. It's very cold, it's very blue, but then it also has some of the other colours sort of showing up. The reds are a lot brighter. So they've managed to play with the colour on that level, but that looks like that was already done. It looks like they've just repeated that, or the copy that they've got has already had a lot of the colours done, but they're acting like they've done it from the original. They're acting like they've scanned the original film again and started from scratch. But if they did that, then they've just repeated the same mistakes that they did in the other version. I'm really not sure. I'm suspicious. I suspect that most of the work was already done for them when they got it, and that's why some of it looks bad. So yeah, very disappointing. The one thing they tried to do, they did a bad job of, the rotoscoping. I keep saying retroscoping. The rotoscoping of McCoy in particular and Kirk look awful in that shot. and it really, and I was watching it on my computer screen. I didn't watch it on my TV because I wanted to be able to do screen captures, and I can't imagine how bad that would have looked on a large screen or on a cinema screen, because I know it's been projected in places today. It would have looked awful. I can't believe they should have been embarrassed to have that on the screen. That just looks awful. And the original wasn't even that bad. So yeah, so I'm disappointed and shocked by a few things. There were a lot of shots though that you saw a lot of detail, which I felt I couldn't really see in the other version. And then I remembered I never watched the Blu-ray. So when I was going through the Blu-ray, I'm like, oh yeah, that detail was there. So I need to watch the original and the new director's edition, both on Blu-ray later on. So because I didn't watch this on my TV, like I said, I watched this on my computer, so mostly so I could do the screenshots, but also technical issues. And no, Paramount didn't get a cent from me for this. So because I do not respect the way they're treating Star Trek, the way they treated this remastered, restoration. And you can't really call it a restoration because they didn't restore it; they altered it. They restored parts of it, they altered other parts of it. They recreated a couple of parts of it, but it's not a true restoration of the director's edition or the original. It's a bit of a mess, and there's a few little good moments, a few baffling bad moments. The sound effects that they added in, it's funny, I really noticed some of the new ones because I was so used to the original, because the original had a lot of very quiet scenes, particularly the space scenes, because they didn't finish the final sound mix, really, is what it comes down to. But they added all these extra effects in to make everything feel more real, because it felt a bit like 2001, like the Space Ballet, where there's no audio, just music, like no sound, you can't hear anything in space. And there was a realism about that in 2001, and that was sort of, there was a little bit of that in the original film, and they've removed that from this film. Every space scene, pretty much, there's sound effects of the ships or the planets or something like there's sound in space. So that kind of ruins that effect in some scenes. In other scenes, they did that anyway. It wasn't consistent in the original film. In this, it's sort of consistent. And like I said, I find them really intrusive, all these little sounds, because I'm so used to them not being in there. Because I've watched the film a million times in the background while doing other things, so I'm more familiar with the soundtrack probably than the visuals. Because the times I actually had the opportunity to sit down and watch it properly, a lot less. But I'm still talking at 22 minutes. Well, that's my review. That's my criticism. I wish I could share some of my thoughts and my screen captures, my images with other Star Trek fans of Star Trek the Motion Picture in the fan groups on Facebook, but I got blocked for criticising some bad pictures which shouldn't have been released. They should have said, these aren't final images. This is not actually an example of what the final film will look like, even though we're presenting it in an article to supposedly show you, give you an idea of what the final film is going to look like. So, F me, I mean, seriously. Yeah, I think everything in the trailer was fairly consistent. They did edit it because it came out first and then it got pulled back and then they put it back out, and they removed a shot of Decker talking to Ilea about contacting Vidya, and instead they inserted a second shot of the bridge being formed, looking at the Enterprise and the crew members sort of on the deck, on the outside of the ship. And now we're at 23 minutes. I'm going to stop talking now. I might have to redo this. It's too long. If not, sorry. I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Thanks. Bye.